Well, Eskom matters now. The power utility Eskom has implemented stage 4 load shedding from 10 a.m. this morning until 5 a.m. on Saturday morning. The utility says that this is due to higher than anticipated demand. Should there be changes, Eskom, of course, will be providing an update. Meanwhile, Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says that Eskom must work towards building energy resilience and reliability to avoid intensified rolling blackouts. Eskom is currently implementing 4 rolling blackouts, stage 4 rolling blackouts. So on that note, we're joined via Zoom by energy expert Ruse Moleshe. Ruse, good afternoon. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon, Lizelle, and to the viewers.
We're obviously monitoring the ripple effects that load shedding has had for the country at large, the economy's growth, prospects, and also just lived reality for South Africans at large. Let me go back to the announcement of the MPC. We saw that it highlighted some positive trends over the last 2 months, but risks like food price inflation and load shedding obviously remain. So I wonder, in lieu of this, blackouts do seem to have a great impact on the economic crisis, and I wonder how you'd weigh in at this point at how we have been dealing with it over the past few months.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, load shedding, which is different from blackouts, has been causing constraints. We have had constraints in terms of South Africa being able, or Eskom, being able to connect others or supply electricity. I do have an echo that's going on.
Ruse, we can hear you. Perhaps you could just continue on the point that you were making about the impact over the past few months.
Okay, so the impact has been that the supply side has been constrained, and that has an impact on consumers, on the economy and industrial customers and everything. We have, however, seen some improvements related to Eskom improving the energy availability factor. So that is encouraging. However, the system remains constrained and remains there's a bit of an echo, sorry.
All right, Ruse, thank you for contextualizing that. I'm just going to continue with the conversation. Perhaps you can ignore the echo and listen to my voice. I'll wrap up the conversation when we're done. So you've now spoken about the impact over the past perhaps few years and months leading up to the MPC's announcement. But over the past few months, we've also seen reprieve being offered following the enrolling blackouts in the last month. And so what is your assessment going forward, especially with the conditions, weather conditions at this point on the low?
So going forward, obviously we need to see a consistent improvement in the supply side to ensure that whatever gains that Eskom is making are sustainable. That's one. Two, we are hopeful that the Kusile units that are scheduled to come back on stream will add additional capacity to the system. We are optimistic that Dupi units will also come back on stream. The only concern now is that there will be delays with the Quebec unit, because if there are, then that means that when Unit 2 goes off, then we'll have over almost 2 stages of load shedding that will not be back on stream. Whereas we are expecting at least one of those units, which gives us almost 1 stage of load shedding, to be back on stream. So it is a dicey situation, and also in winter, depending on the demand and the weather conditions, the demand could increase and reduce availability of electricity. Thus, we end up using diesel, which is also costly to the economy. So all of these interventions that we're looking at, perhaps if there was additional capacity, significant additional capacity that were to come in, this stop and go would be less of an impact.
We also heard some sentiments from SAB being echoed that South Africa, in fact, could have grown by 7% had we not had the rolling blackouts. But at this point, I also want to look at the impact on small businesses and the reality on the ground. Those who've had to put in alternative energy supply sources for them to run, those who have also lost their businesses, how they're faring at this point during the transition and what is transpiring in terms of the load shedding schedule. How do you begin to weigh in on that as well?
Typically, your small business, the cost structure of small business are relatively constrained. So there's very little room to add additional costs and still make profit. So the impact of load shedding is will have an impact where some of the small businesses will be required to invest in alternative technologies, which very often they cannot afford. So many will go under because they cannot afford the additional costs of mitigating load shedding, and their businesses will go under, or they will suffer constraints over a long period of time where they are, and maybe they may have to reduce staff to manage the cost complement of the business. So it's a devastating impact on businesses, especially small businesses.
Absolutely. When we explore the scenarios at hand and perhaps also what is available, given the energy plan that has also been implemented, the alternatives available, what should we be reprioritizing or perhaps using as alternatives to get through this winter period and focus on getting South Africa's economy back on track as well?
Those who can afford are getting technologies like solar PV on their rooftops. They are getting generators. So those are some of the options that are available, but those are available to people who can afford. There are other options that include reducing the demand, switching off some of the unnecessary appliances when one is not using them is one of the interventions. Just changing behavior and making sure one is conscious of whether they use electricity more efficiently or not. That's when you are not able to afford. Also, there's an option of having gas, some supply gas for heating purposes. Solar hot water systems are some of the alternatives. There are quite a lot of alternatives on the demand side management. But in most cases, people are still grid connected and therefore they still have reliance on Eskom.
Yep, and the reality is not many have those options available. And you speak about behavior change. I wonder how safety and security has also come into the mix in terms of safeguarding citizens at large, protecting some of those infrastructure that you allude to as well as alternatives.
We've always had a problem with the theft of infrastructure when it comes to power lines and everything. And so load shedding makes now criminals to have time to plan because everyone has access to the schedule. And so they may know that over a period of time, there'll be an outage in a particular substation and help themselves to the infrastructure. It's a very unfortunate scenario, but it is something that is happening.
Ruse, thank you for your time with us on the SABC, really helping us to put the pieces of the puzzle together. We obviously seen the impact that load shedding has had on the country, perhaps also in relation to the growth of the economy and on small businesses and citizens at large. We're trying to also explore the way forward, particularly as we navigate the winter season and beyond. Ruse Moleshe is an energy expert helping us to understand that a little bit better.